Welcome back. We just found out that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is leaving the Trump administration at the end of the year. All that while President Trump announced he will nominate William Barr to serve as the Attorney General, the next Attorney General. Is there more to this White House shakeup than the eye can see? Back with me, former U.S. Attorney Daniel Goldman, former Obama official Chris Lu, Republican strategist Shermichael Singleton, and Tiffany Cross of the Beat DC. Let me ask you, Chris, you were in the Obama administration under Secretary of Labor. You worked in the Justice Department. The changing of a chief of staff, how much does that really matter, and what does it really mean to the direction of a president and his administration?
In a typical White House, the chief of staff is essentially the person that runs everything, is in charge of the policy process, a lot of the politics, making sure that the president's schedule reflects the priorities. The challenge in this White House is that we will now be on the third chief of staff within 2 years. No one has been able to tame this president. John Kelly was supposed to be the savior. He was supposed to be putting discipline into the president's schedule, ensuring that he wasn't calling people at all hours of the night. That apparently lasted a couple months, and then the president chafed under that and went back to his old habits. And even someone who is as distinguished as John Kelly is could not keep this president under control. And so I suspect that the chaos that we have seen, the disruption we have seen over the past 2 years will continue. It really doesn't matter who the chief of staff is in this White House. Donald Trump is a lone operator.
Tiffany Cross, there are many issues around criminal justice. We have the Garner case in New York. We have what is going on in Alabama and Robbins, Illinois. We have voter fraud allegations in North Carolina. William Barr coming in is something that will be really affect whether or not the Justice Department puts any of these matters, voting rights, police reform, civil rights, as a priority. What is your forecast based on his long record on William Barr and how he will handle these matters? We even see McConnell is not even moving forward on the bipartisan next step bill of criminal justice reform or prison reform.
Well, I think that William Barr is going to get a smooth confirmation hearing process. He's done the job before. You have a Republican-controlled Senate. I don't anticipate a lot of pushback. I don't anticipate a lot of pressing questions. This person will not be a friend to criminal justice at all. He actually penned an op-ed in the 90s encouraging more prison. He wanted people to have more prison time. So he is not somebody who's going to champion any type of criminal justice reform. And just as important, he's not someone who's going to provide any checks and balances with this White House. I mean, we've seen the president all but obstruct justice. He's stopped short of tweeting something like snitches get stitches, and we don't have anybody there checking him. So I don't anticipate William Barr doing that at all. He's not going to be a big leap from Jeff Sessions, who was the Attorney General before him. I think that the bar has been set so low because Matt Whitaker was in this position, and this is somebody who was selling, hot tubs on infomercials at 3 a.m. So people are, somewhat wiping the sweat from their brow when they hear a name like somebody who's at least a product of the executive branch. But this is somebody who should cause significant concern. He's someone who believes in sweeping presidential power. He's someone who thinks that Roe v. Wade should be overturned. He's not somebody who's going to be a voice of reason for this president. But also, to Chris's point, it really doesn't matter who's in these positions. This president flies by the seat of his pants. He acts out of chaos and doesn't often put a lot of thought process in the decisions he makes. So I'm not sure how important his cabinet members are really at this point.
Daniel, Tiffany says the bar is so low. I guess pun is intended there. What will a Barr as Attorney General mean, if anything? Will he just be someone acting out the will of this president, or will he be an independent Attorney General based on his record as you know it? Because he was Attorney General before under the first President Bush.
I think if you're worried about who Donald Trump is going to put in the Attorney General's office, because what he did with Whitaker in so clearly putting a crony of his in to try to undercut the Mueller investigation, I think you have to be breathing a sigh of relief. Whatever his policies may be, and I think Tiffany points to several that are of concern to Democrats and progressives, he is an institutionalist, and he believes in the institution of the Department of Justice.
What does the president?
Well, the president doesn't appear to, but that's why I actually think someone like William Barr, with a lifelong career, a reputation already, who's done the job, he carries some gravitas, and I would expect him to push back on any efforts to undermine the Department of Justice. So in that regard, I think it's a positive appointment from in the grand scheme in Trump world, where who knows how bad it could have been.
Well, the last guy, Sir Michael, that we heard push back a little was told today he's leaving. I mean, can you push back and survive this president? This president seems to be one that does not take kindly to people pushing back. And at some point, if he is anyway, he being Barr, anyway, like Daniel is saying, he will end up having to bump heads with this president and may not be able to win that battle.
Yeah, I mean, there's no indication at this point in time, nearly 2 years into this presidency, that the president does take advice from people who actually do have an expertise or experience in a certain area. Remember Rex Tillerson comments a day or two ago where he stated that the president did not listen to his advice. He stated that the president would often...
He
doesn't read either, correct. And he stated the president would frequently at least attempt or at least make comments about getting around the law, attempting to do things illegally. I do think, however, as Daniel pointed out with Mr. Barr's past experience being an institutionalist, that he will sort of walk to the beat of his own drum. Now, I do think that will at some point create a problem, similarly to the problem that we saw with Jeff Sessions, who is no longer there. And so I think the president may be hoping, based on some of Mr. Barr's previous comments on presidential powers, that he will lead in a manner that is in his favor. And I think at the end of the day, Reverend Sharpton, he is going to find himself extremely disappointed.
Well, at the same time, Chris, if he marches to the beat of his own drum, the beat he's had before is far from the areas of civil rights and criminal justice reform and voter fraud reform and voter suppression that many of us have wanted to see this country move forward on. So he may march to the beat of his own drum, Chris, but the tune that he's been beating has not been one that a lot of Americans really want to see happen, particularly when you have North Carolina, Wisconsin, and what happened in Georgia with Stacey Abrams.
It's exactly right. William Barr is an institutionalist, and hopefully he will try to protect the independence of the department. From a process standpoint, that's important. But let's not forget the policies, and Tiffany talked about some of those policies. But the direction that this administration has taken, whether it's in terms of voting rights, whether it's in criminal justice, whether it's immigration, that hard right policy will continue because that direction is being set by the president. So again, Mr. Barr is a conservative. He's an institutionalist, but let's not forget how conservative his policies are. And as you correctly point out, those are out of step with where the people of this country are and where the history of this country is.
Tiffany, do you expect the Democrats to really challenge William Barr in the confirmation hearings on the areas that we are discussing here that many of us are concerned about?
I do, actually, and I think this is one of the reasons why, and as you and I have discussed on your radio show, this is why it's so important for people like Senator Kamala Harris to keep her seat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is in question now with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell putting her seat in peril, because you need a formidable prosecutor like that to question some of his political standpoints, particularly when you have a president running roughhouse and skirting the law at every chance he gets. So I think you can expect some tough questioning from people like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Mazie Hirono, as evidenced by some of the confirmation hearings that we've seen before. The Judiciary Committee is such an important committee for that reason alone.
All right, and thank you for plugging my radio show. Tiffany Cross, Daniel Goldman, and Chris Liu, and, of course, my friend, Sir Michael Singleton. Up next, a call for justice. What connects Nelson Mandela to a young man killed by police in Alabama and to the 2020 race? We'll be right back.